The sound of the motorcycle cut through the evening like a wounded roar, loud, tired, and angry, echoing off the cracked pavement and brick walls of a forgotten part of town, and the man riding it carried that same sound inside his chest, a lifetime of noise, regret, and restless movement that never let him sit still long enough to feel the pain he kept buried. Jack Turner had ridden thousands of miles to outrun his past, yet somehow every road led him back to the same lonely stop signs, the same gas stations that smelled like rust and old oil, and the same nights where the world felt too quiet once the engine shut off. He was the kind of man people crossed the street to avoid, leather worn thin, beard streaked with gray, eyes sharp but hollow, and on this particular evening, he was about to make a choice that could have ended everything without him ever knowing why. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the hardest lives can still be touched by something pure, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect us no matter where we are. Jack pulled over near a rundown convenience store, the kind with flickering lights and a parking lot scarred by old oil stains and broken glass. His hands shook as he reached into his saddlebag, not from fear but from habit, the habit of reaching for something that dulled the edges of memory. The bottle felt cold and familiar, a promise of numbness he had kept too many times before. Years ago, he had been a different man, a husband, a father, someone who believed tomorrow was worth planning for, until a single night, a single mistake, and a single moment of loss shattered that version of himself beyond repair. Since then, the road had been his home and silence his companion, broken only by the rumble of his bike and the burn in his throat. That was when he noticed her, standing just outside the store, a little girl no more than 8 years old, clutching a worn backpack that looked too big for her small shoulders. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, strands falling across a face that held something unsettling, not fear, not curiosity, but a seriousness that didn't belong to childhood. She wasn't staring at the motorcycle or the intimidating man beside it like most kids would. She was staring at his hands, at the bottle, at the choice forming in front of her eyes. Jack barely registered her presence at first. Children had become invisible to him, reminders of a life he no longer allowed himself to think about. But there was something about the way she stood there, unmoving, as if the world itself had paused and was waiting to see what he would do next. Jack lifted the bottle, the familiar weight grounding him, the rim already close enough that he could taste the bitterness in anticipation. He would have ignored anything, anyone, just like he always did. But something strange happened inside him, a hesitation so small it almost didn't exist, a flicker of awareness that felt like a hand brushing his sleeve. He noticed movement, the girl stepping closer, her small shoes crunching softly against gravel. Her eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that cut through years of self-destruction. In a quiet, steady motion, she shook her head, not angrily, not dramatically, but with a sadness that felt far too heavy for someone her age. Jack scoffed under his breath, irritation flaring, the old instinct to push the world away kicking in. He didn't need saving, didn't want it. He had lived long enough with his choices. Yet he didn't drink. His hand froze in midair, suspended between habit and something else, something unfamiliar. The girl didn't smile or beg or run away. She simply reached into her backpack and held up a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges, creased from being opened too many times. Jack didn't know why he reached for it, why he took it from her trembling hands, but when he unfolded it, the air seemed to leave his lungs all at once. It was a drawing, simple and uneven, done in crayons, showing a man on a motorcycle, dark clouds above him, and beside the road a smaller figure reaching out. Below it, written in clumsy handwriting, were words that struck like a punch to the chest, words about a father who used to ride, who used to promise he'd come home, who believed one drink didn't matter until it did. Jack's knees buckled, the bottle slipping from his grip and hitting the ground, the sound sharp and final as it shattered, liquid soaking into the dirt like a sacrifice he was too late to undo but somehow had been spared this time. Memories he had buried violently clawed their way to the surface, images of his own daughter, Emily, standing in a doorway years ago, backpack on her shoulders, asking him not to leave angry, asking him to stay, to listen, to choose her over the bottle. He had laughed it off then, just like he almost did now. Emily's face, frozen forever at the age she was when the drunk driver hit her mother's car, flooded his vision, and for the first time in years, Jack didn't turn away from the pain. He dropped to his knees in the parking lot, uncaring of who might see, tears cutting paths through the grime on his face as the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he'd been running from crushed him at once. The little girl didn't touch him. She didn't need to. Her presence alone felt like a lifeline, a quiet reminder that the world still noticed choices, that consequences rippled outward in ways no one ever fully saw. Jack learned later that her name was Lily, that her father had died 2 years earlier because no one had stopped him that night, and that she stood outside that store every evening, hoping maybe, just maybe, she could save someone else the way no one had saved him. Jack stayed there until the sky darkened completely, talking to her guardian when they arrived, promising things he never thought he'd say out loud, promises about getting help, about facing mornings sober, about honoring the people he loved by finally choosing to live. From that night on, Jack's life didn't magically fix itself. Recovery was brutal, lonely, and humbling. There were days his hands shook worse than they ever had, nights when the road called his name like an old friend. But whenever he felt himself slipping, he remembered the weight of that piece of paper, the sound of glass breaking, the look in Lily's eyes, and the truth that someone small and brave had believed he was worth saving even when he didn't. Months later, Jack rode again, not to run, but to arrive, volunteering, speaking, telling his story in places that smelled like old coffee and second chances, carrying Lily's drawing folded carefully in his jacket pocket like a compass pointing him back to himself. Just before the ending, we want to ask you something from the heart. Please comment one word that describes how this story made you feel, because your words matter more than you know. And now, near the end, if this story touched your heart, if it made you think of someone you love or a moment where everything could have gone differently, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it so others can feel this too, because sometimes a story is the sign someone else needs. Jack still rides, still carries the scars, but now every mile is a thank you, every sunrise a promise kept, and somewhere, a little girl's courage continues to echo louder than any engine, reminding us all that even the most broken roads can lead to something beautiful if we stop long enough to see it.